students. Welcome to the last term, the last week, the last lesson of the year. This is the end lesson of the textbook. When you revise previous lesson, in previous lesson, lesson 5, in general, we discussed about the definitions of an ecosystem. Ecosystem refers to the animals and the plants that live in an area along with the things that affect them. It's called ecosystem. And in ecosystem there is environment, which is an organism's home, and it is surrounding is called an environment. Those environments have a habitat. Habitats is a place where an organisms live is called habitat. And when organisms live in a given habitat, there is a relationship among themselves. We call it niche, a niche. So habitat is maybe aquatic or water habitat and terrestrial or land habitat. Aquatic or water habitats are marine, fresh water, and terrestrial habitats are arboreal or ground or underground. Those are categories of habitat, and those habitats and there is a biotic and abiotic component of an ecosystem, which means factors that can affect ecosystems are biotic and abiotic. Biotic are biological factors, whereas abiotics are physical factors. So biotic factors are autotrophs, heterotrophs, decomposers, and competition. Abiotic factors are edaphic factor, like soil, climatic factor, like humidity, and topographic factor, like altitude. So those are biotic and abiotic component of an ecosystem, or the living and non-living component of an ecosystem, which may affect our ecosystem or the ecosystem directly or indirectly on the life of an organism in a given ecosystem, which are factors of an ecosystem. Next, we discussed about food chain and food web relationship among organisms. Food chain is a direct feeding relationship, whereas food web is a complex or indirect or complicated feeding relationship among the organisms is called food web. So this relationship among themselves have numerous characteristics. Let's say food chain is mainly first trophic level. Trophic level means the feeding level. First trophic level is accompanied by producers, which are called autotrophs. Second trophic level is accompanied by herbivores and omnivores, which are primary consumers. And third trophic level is accompanied by primary carnivore and omnivores, called secondary consumers. And fourth trophic levels are occupied by secondary carnivores, which are tertiary consumers. Let's as example, let's say grass is producers, first trophic level, then insect, lizard, bird. So grass is first trophic level, autotrophs. Insect is the second trophic level, primary consumer. Lizard is at third trophic level, secondary consumer. And finally, birds are at the fourth trophic level, they are tertiary consumers. If you look at what the diagram in short, so there is autotrophs are the first trophic level all over the time, then heterotrophs are occupied the trophic level from second trophic level to the last. This is how in a given trophic level of the food chain organisms can relate each other. When you see the aquatic food chain, there is a phytoplankton and zooplankton inside. Phytoplankton means they are microscopic photosynthetic organisms, which are the beginning of many aquatic food chain or plant plankton. Aquatic phototrophs are called phytoplankton, like algae and the fun. Zooplanktons are microscopic animal organisms. Mainly they feed on phytoplankton. Animals, plankton are zooplankton. They are primary consumers of aquatic food chain or aquatic chemotrophs like the larvae, sponges or polyperans, since they are found in the water. So if they have aquatic food chain, as first trophic level there is a phytoplankton, then second trophic level is zooplankton, third trophic level is carnivores, which are primary carnivores or omnivores, then secondary carnivores, and the like. Let's say algae is eaten by tadpole, tadpole is eaten by bony fish is eaten by shark is eaten by crocodile. As example, this is aquatic food chain. Whereas terrestrial food chain, terrestrial food chain, there's grass is eaten by grasshopper is eaten by frog is eaten by snake. So this is how their food chain relates, and food web is complex. If you listen in yesterday class, it is complex feeding relationship between organisms. And finally there is ecological pyramid. Ecological pyramids are the trophic structures of an ecosystem, which are described in terms of pyramid of energy, pyramid of number, and the pyramid of biomass. So pyramid of number is the number of an organism at each trophic level. Pyramid of energy is the amount of energy produced at each trophic level, and pyramid of biomass is the dry mass of tissue of an organism at each trophic level. So those ecological pyramids from first trophic level to fourth trophic level, they become decrease. Mainly in pyramids of number, biomass and energy, producers has greater effect or in number than that of consumers totally. This is what the lesson we discussed in yesterday's class. Today we are going to discuss the last part of your textbook, which says nutrient cycling and adaptations of plant and animal during harsh environment. The objective of the lesson is, at the end of this section, you are expected to explain how nitrogen and carbon recycled in an ecosystem, and list the adaptive mechanism of plant and animals at the time of difficult climatic conditions. Those are the two main objectives at the end of the lesson you will accomplish. When starting the lesson, 6.3 is recycling and nature. We all living organisms are constantly removing material from the environment. Had this process been a one-way process, the Earth's resources would have been completely exploited long years ago. Fortunately, as there are ways through which nutrients are removed from the environment, there are also ways through which they can be get back into the environment to ascertain their availability. The actual process used to make this happen is called recycling and nature. So nutrients are recycled. There are a variety of nutrients which must be recycled in nature so as to confirm the survival of life on Earth. We survive in this world, let's say, because of the recycling of nutrients. Nitrogen and the carbon cycles are the two most common cycles which are listed in your textbook, but there are numerous cycles like phosphorus cycle, sulfur cycle, water cycle, and so on. But in your textbook only nitrogen and the carbon cycles are listed. When you come to the first part, nitrogen cycle. Nitrogen is a very important component of biological molecule in the body of both plants and animals. For example, it is a component of molecules like amino acids, DNA and RNA. The usable form of nitrogen for plants are nitrates. Atmospheric nitrogen, the major proportions of atmospheric gas, is the unreactive and therefore unusable form of nitrogen. So the first stage of nitrogen cycle begins when plants absorb nitrogen in the form of nitrates from the soil. Plants use the nitrates to synthesize their proteins, and the nitrogen is in the form of protein, therefore passes into the body of animals when they consume. producer plants. It is in such a way that nitrogen is incorporated into the body of all organisms. It's also in such a way that nitrogen is removed from the environment. Here below are some of the possible ways through which nitrogen gets back into the environment. The first possibility is the death of both plants and animals. When they die, their dead part is composed of protein substance for decomposing microorganisms like bacteria and fungi to act. The putrefying or decomposing bacteria breaking down the higher proteins into ammonium compounds. The ammonium compounds then therefore converted into nitrates by the actions of bacteria called nitrifying bacteria. The second possibility is that the putrefying bacteria can also act on the proteins found the waste products of animals like fish and urea. And the third possibility is that the potentially existing atmospheric nitrogen in the soil can be converted into ammonia by the process known as nitrogen fixation. Then the actual bacteria which are used to make this process happen are called nitrogen fixing bacteria. The nitrifying bacteria thus are used to convert the ammonia compounds into nitrates after they have been produced by the nitrogen fixing bacteria. In contrast to this process, there are some other bacteria which aim to decrease the concentrations of nitrates in the soil. These bacteria are called denitrifying bacteria. They use the nitrates in the soil as the source of energy to break them down into atmospheric nitrogen gas. So, the summary of the nitrogen cycle: atmospheric nitrogen is the unusable form of nitrogen. Nitrates are the usable form of nitrogen for a plant. Nitrogen can be removed from the environment by two processes: plants consumption and denitrification. Denitrification is a process mediated by denitrifying bacteria. Nitrogen, on the other hand, can be get back into the environment by the two processes: nitrification or decomposition and nitrogen fixation. Nitrification directly increases nitrates concentration, or nitrogen fixation. Nitrogen fixation indirectly increases nitrates concentration. This is how the nitrogen cycle process goes on. So generally, when you see the nitrogen cycle, nitrates in the soil is converted into nitrogen in the air by denitrifying bacteria, whereas nitrogen in the air are converted into nitrates in the soil by nitrogen fixing bacteria. Then nitrates in the soil is taken by plants by autotrophic nutrition. Then plants is taken by heterotrophic nutrition to animals, which means that animals feed on plants, and also animals to ammonium compound is by ammonifying bacteria or putrefying bacteria, and the ammonium compounds when is taken to the nitrate in the soil by nitrifying bacteria. This is how they recycled. So this is all about the nitrogen cycle we are going to discuss. So there is a plant, there is animals which can undergo. Also at the beginning there is a plant, nitrate in the soil, which are decomposed one taken by green plants. Again, green plant is eaten by rabbits. Again, rabbits, when they die, they release ammonium compounds, or by decomposers they break down their body dead parts into the soil. Again, nitrate in the soil found, which is taken into the air. Nitrogen in the air is found, which is constant 78%. This is how nitrogen cycle is held on. The next cycle is carbon cycle. It's the main constant of all organic molecules in the body of all organisms. The usable form of carbon is the atmospheric carbon dioxide. As there are ways through which carbon dioxide is removed from the atmosphere, there are also ways through which it gets back. The first stage of carbon cycle begins when plants consume or absorb atmospheric carbon dioxide to undergo photosynthesis. The process is used to produce primarily carbohydrates and in turn the proteins and lipids. So carbon continues to be part of the animal's body when they feed plants. This is the way through which carbon is removed from the atmosphere. Here below are the processes through which carbon gets back into the atmosphere: by respiration by plants, respiration by animals, respiration by microorganisms, by combustion or burning of fossil fuels. These are the way in which carbon is taken back to atmosphere. This is the carbon cycle, how the carbon cycle is occurred. So at the beginning there is organic compounds in dead organisms, which is organic compounds in the fossil fuels, burning, then carbon dioxide in the air and dissolved in water and particularly oceans, then by photosynthesis removes carbon dioxide from the environment. Then it is plants or green plants make. These green plants, maybe they dead, then it is organic matters into the soil, which is how they are recycled. And the second option is here, which are plants taken by or eaten by animals. Then this animals becomes dead. Again, organic compound in dead organisms is turned into the soil. Then it is continuous. This is how the carbon cycle is occurs between plants and animal, with different heterotropic parts. The excessive accumulations of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere leads to global warming as a greenhouse effect. The increased concentrations of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Deforestation can also indirectly lead to this global warming, deforestation. So the last lesson of your textbook is adaptation. In this process, through which organisms develop features which help them to make sure that surviving in any situation is actually possible. Both plants and animals can develop different features to survive in a very cold or hot habitat. Animals in a cold environment have the following features. Animals mainly survive in different environmental conditions by having different features. In cold environment, animals having a small surface area to volume ratio. They have a very small ears, and animals have a thick fat layer. In order to conserve heat, this whole thing is in order to conserve heat or to prevent heat loss. Why? Because animals are homothermic animals, which means they can maintain their own internal body temperature due to their different mechanism. Assume that we are going in cold environment, we can take a clothes or double our clothes and a jacket in order to conserve our body heat. Animals in hot environment have the following features: undergo sweating, because sweating have a cooling effect. Resting in burrows, they are found inside the burrows or any shrubs or herbs. They mostly have large surface area to volume ratio. They have large thin ears and not having much fur. This is how animals in hot environment they can survive. Again, plants which live in hot environment have the following features: having small fleshy leaves, having thick waxy cuticle to prevent water loss, and having curled leaves and a few number of stomata to prevent photorespiration or excessive removal of waters from inside to outside. Again, to prevent excessive loss of carbon dioxide. Such plants which live in hot and dry environment have the ability of storing water in their flesh leaves. They are called succulent plants. Succulent plants are plants that store water in their fleshy stem, roots, leaves, and fruits, like pineapple, like cacti plant, like lemon, like orange. They can store their water in their different organs. Finally, there is a tree growing project. Tree growing project has the following steps. Stage 1 is preparing the soil for plant growth, prepare or supplement of the soil. Stage 2 is digging a big hole for the plant to place. And stage 3 is place water in the hole before the plant is planted. And stage 4 is plant the plant and press the soil around it. This is how we can make a growth of trees or plants, or how we can undergo afforestation. This is the steps. Dear students, in order to evaluate your lesson, there is a classwork at the end. So list the adaptive mechanism of desert plant cactus, because plants have different mechanisms to survive in hot environment. If it is desert, it's in hot environment. So list them for cactus plants or cacti plants. Question number 2, from first to fourth tropic level, pyramid of number, energy, and biomass is blank. Question number 3, the tropic structures of an ecosystem is called blank. And the last question, what is the role of nitrogen fixing bacteria? Please pause the video and again do or copy the questions one by one in your exercise book. Let's do as together. Question number 1, list the adaptive mechanism of desert plant cactus. The adaptive mechanism of desert plant cactus in hot environment with the presence of spine, short-sized, small surface area of the leaf, adventitious roots, or they do have fibrous roots, a number of roots, branching roots to absorb water, and a water storing organ availability, since they are succulent plant. Once they can store the water and they can save this precious water for the later use. Question number 2, from first to fourth tropic level, pyramid of number, energy, and biomass decreases. They decrease. The reverse is true. From fourth tropic level to first, they increase. Question number 3, the tropic structures of an ecosystem is called ecological pyramid. The last question, what is the role of nitrogen fixing bacteria? The role of nitrogen fixing bacteria is converting of atmospheric nitrogen into nitrites, then nitrates. Atmospheric nitrogen Na2 is converted into NO2, then NO2 is converted into NO3, which means, in short, atmospheric nitrogen is converted into nitrates. Let's summarize the total of the lesson. In general, we discussed mainly about nutrient cycling, nitrogen cycle, the main essential part, and carbon cycle. All living organisms, they do have carbon, and adaptations of plant, how plants can survive or adapt in harsh environment, in cold environment, or in hot environment. And finally, animal adaptation, when climatic condition fluctuates, when changed, how they can adapt or survive. And the tree growing project, you have seen how we can grow a tree with steps. So this is all about the total of the lesson, and there is a homework. So dear students, please pause the video again and write homework on your exercise book and try to answer one by one. Question number 1 is, what is the difference between nitrifying and denitrifying bacteria? Question number 2, at each tropic level, biomass is lost through blank, blank, and blank. question number 3. What is the adaptive mechanism of chameleon to confuse their enemy or prey? And the last question, the flow of energy through an ecosystem is blank. Dear students, please copy this homework plus try to answer review questions on your textbook, page 217, 222, 224 and 225. Again, students, thank you for all of the video lecture of the lesson. If there is a chance when the class resume, we will meet together. Until to meet each other, stay home, stay safe and save lives. Thank you for your all careful considerations of the lesson, starting from the lesson first video lecturer until today's last video lecturer. So please read more and more to be effective in order to succeed what this pandemic disease and prevent yourselves from any connection to anyone. Why? Because it is pandemic and not aid by our aid, since it is viral. So please prevent yourself, combat yourself, stay at home, don't go outside. This is what I wanted to recommend as a biology teacher. So thank you for all careful listening. Bye.